You've seen him in the videos, you've seen him in the promotional materials that are available from Symmetry. You've seen him absolutely take this thing and just light it on fire. Everybody give a big shake of two hands for Andrew Jimenez. That's our new clap. Let's go, Andrew! So what was it when you were at college that you were just like, this isn't it?
So I was on a full ride for academics, and I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And as soon as I read that book, I started to realize there's got to be a faster way to do this thing. So number one is you have to get the client to say the date and time at least 3 times. You go, oh, hold on, Ryan. You just said that should work. Now, is that should, like it might, or like definitely at 6 p.m. on Monday is going to work best for you?
Voted 2021's sexiest man in Symmetry. Only second to Jordan Shank. I was voted 239th on that list, but it was still higher than Keith, so I'm good. Really somebody that you've seen him in the videos, you've seen him in the different promotional materials that are available from Symmetry. You've seen him actually absolutely take this thing and just light it on fire. Since he came to Symmetry Financial Group. Everybody give a big shake of two hands for Andrew Jimenez. That's our new clap here. In fact, I actually have some kids cheering. If I can maybe share my audio here and get some kids cheering for you. How about this? Let's go, Andrew! All right. So Andrew, why don't you just, because a lot of people don't know you on this, they've never heard your story, they don't know your background. Why don't you give us just a brief glimpse into kind of, recap your childhood. Don't have to go too deep into it, but really those years just before you found Symmetry, kind of what was going on, what's your background, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too long ago. I just got my driver's license last week, so that's been
looks like it.
Yeah.
Can't even drink legally yet.
Yeah, exactly, man. So guys, my name is Andrew Jimenez. I am direct to the bald and beautiful Mr. Jacob Pogue. I'm very happy to be so here in the Wayland organization. I got started with Symmetry. Well, background, really, I mean, I came from stock and box in a warehouse, guys. That was my one and only job before Symmetry. Before that, I was a college dropout. 3 semesters is all about. I landed there, got my degree and everything like that from high school. But mainly, man, I mean, I came to Symmetry when I was 21, and my whole entire adult career, I guess, has really been here with Symmetry. So not a whole lot of background, nothing crazy yet. I can tell you this, everything that I've gotten to experience with Symmetry has really helped shape me entirely.
All right, so real quick, let's dive into this. So you're from Tucson, is that right?
Yeah, but born and raised in Phoenix. I just went to Tucson for high school.
Oh, okay, got it. So born and raised in Phoenix, went to Tucson, went to college, and you were like, this isn't for me. So what was it when you were at college that you were just like, this isn't it?
Yeah, it was a moment where I was actually going for pre-med, pre-business. So I was on a full ride for academics. And I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And as soon as I read that book, I started to realize, holy smokes, my plan that I currently have is going to take me 40 to 50 years to kind of get to this level of retirement that I really want. And I said, there's got to be a faster way to do this thing. So I kept reading the book and I realized, oh, I need to get out of college as fast as possible and really get started on one thing, which was get into sales, be an entrepreneur, and figure it out from there. And that's what I did.
Plug for Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. We talk about that book all the time. If you haven't read it, you need to read it immediately. You can get it free on zlibrary.org. If you jump in z-lib.org, get you the free Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and read that thing. Amazing, amazing book. So you drop out of college. I'm sure your parents were like, thumbs up, full ride scholarship. I'm out of here. Your parents were like, that's exactly what we thought. And then you go to a warehouse to stock boxes. So talk about that transition. You're supposed to be pre-med, and now you're at a warehouse stocking boxes. And what was that like?
So I was actually working at the warehouse, going to school at the exact same time. But making that decision to drop out of college easily was the best and hardest decision I had ever made at that moment. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I dropped out of college and everything's peachy and fine, right? No, my parents were furious. They were extremely upset. So much so that they kicked me out of the house. And now I was living on my own. And I was at that moment too. Oh, hey, Terry Allinger, good to see you. On top of that, number two, when I got kicked out, is basically this: as the U.S. government then gave me a call because I had a free ride from one of their grants, and because I wasn't going to school anymore, they wanted the full amount that I paid into tuition back. And I had to show them I had $0 to pay that. The University of Arizona had everything. And so I would have ended up owing $600 in student loans. I had $600 in rent, and I had $100 and something left over for food, gas, electricity, you name it. There were times that I would walk to the grocery store. It was 1.5 miles down the way, and I would actually shop at the dollar store versus the actual Kroger store, because it was $1. It was $7 for a loaf of bread, jar of peanut butter, jar of jelly, and then every pay period, my cheat meal of any pay period was $11.42 at Taco Bell. And so
I thought you were gonna throw Chipotle in there, man, but you threw Taco Bell. All right, all right.
8 months of that. 8 months of that.
So you're stocking boxes, dropped out of college, going, what's next? And then you see a job ad. Where'd you see the job ad first off?
No, so my mentor at the time, Martin and Rita, actually showed me. They started Symmetry, they started insurance. They made about almost 100 grand their first year. Their second year, they're telling me, Andrew, you have to get into this. It's been extremely lucrative for us. And I mean, I knew them when they were making 40, 50 grand combined total income. And then they go from making that to 98 grand their first year, 286 grand their second year. And I'm just looking at it, I'm like, okay, if you guys are seriously making this much money, just tell me what I got to do and I'll go do it.
So you're warm market recruited. You know people that work at Symmetry, and they're like, hey, you should look into this.
Yep.
So you had a certain level of belief because you knew somebody who had worked for here. Now you come into Symmetry, and let's talk about, what that first 6 months was like for you, because you came zero sales experience, no insurance experience, very little life experience, right? And now you're jumping into starting your own business with some heavy hitters. I mean, Martin and Rita in your corner, grew a huge agency, Jacob Pogue looking over you, one of the most dominating agencies in Symmetry. So what was your first 6 months like?
Yeah. Do you mind if I tell a big story?
No, go ahead.
All right, cool. Jessica Pease might remember this, but I came around the same time that Roddy Jessup. Is Roddy Jessup, Sam, Johnny. Like, if you guys at any moment are ever feeling like that comparison syndrome where you see these people that maybe come around at the same time you do, but are excellent at what they do, guys, I was that person that literally felt like I struggled for 27 days to make my first sale. And I'm watching all these other guys that came on at the exact same time put up $3, $5, $6, $8, $10, $15,000 in a week. And I'm over here thinking, man, what am I doing wrong? Right? Why can't I just figure out how to make a single sale? And they're out crushing it within their first 4 weeks. And so when I first got started, my first thought was, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And they told me right out the gate, hey, you got to attend conference. You got to buy leads, and you got to get your license. And I'm looking at these guys, Keith, and I kid you not, I'm like, well, I don't know where you guys where you guys kind of get your money from, but I mean, my bank account overdrafted that same day. And so they're like, I remember Jacob came to me and he goes, Andrew, in this business, it's your job to go out there and help people who just recently purchased home refinance, help them solve their financial problems. And he said, if you can't figure out your own financial problems, how do you expect to make that happen? And the second piece he said was, the people who win here at a big level just make a decision and figure it out. And so I said, okay, if that's what it's going to take, I'll figure it out. So the first thing that I did was I scrounged up to some money to get my license. And then I made 3 phone calls after that license came in. And I called mom, grandma, and stepmom, 3 most important women in my life. And I sold 3 insurance policies. I took that money. I had nothing to get with. So I took that money and I took $500 and I bought a plane ticket and a hotel space to a conference in Raleigh, North Carolina that was coming up in about 2 weeks. And then on the other 1,000, I said, okay, I have leads for 4 weeks. I'm going to either make this thing work or, I got nothing else to fall on, because I called my boss and I left him a voicemail and said I wasn't showing up to the warehouse on Monday. And so I got started, and here was my first week. So if you guys could do me a favor, grab a pen, and if you have one, a highlighter. If you don't have a highlighter, obviously just underline or circle. But if I say like one-liners or things that really resonate, like lifestyle wise, that you can implement, I want you to highlight it. If I say something that just kind of hits home, just write it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys literally my first 4 weeks in this business, and kind of what transpired to the next 6 months and thereafter. But the first 4 weeks, I think, are super important, because a lot of people lose sight in these first 4 weeks and either are here for forever, or two, feel like they're just floundering. And so guys, my first 4 weeks really look like this. I got on the phones, I spent $250. I only purchased B1 leads at that time. Okay. And here are my dial ratios. I had made 182 dials. I spoke to like 40 something people, and I booked 3 appointments. Now, I guarantee you, I was jazzed up for those 3 appointments. And here's what happened. I had a Monday and a Tuesday. I had a 6 and an 8 o'clock on Monday, and I'm driving out Levon to my 6 o'clock, and I start knocking on the door. No one's answering. Knock on the door. No one's answering. So I give him a call, Levon, and he goes, "Oh, sorry, buddy, I'm outside. Let me come to the front door." And I kid you not, I sit there waiting for another 5 minutes before I call him again. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still here. Nobody's came to the door." And he goes, "Son, I'm in front of the doorway right now. There's nobody here." And I looked down at my lead sheet, and I realized I drove to my 8 o'clock's house instead of my 6 o'clock's house for my very first appointment. The most rookie mistake you could possibly ever make of all rookies, right? So I got in my car and I drove all the way across town in rush hour traffic, Phoenix, Arizona, to then knock on the door. And the only thing he tells me, Mohammed, is this: "Man, son, you better get your schedule under control. Otherwise, no one's going to do business with you." And closes the door on me. And I have to go back into my car and drive all the way back to my 8 o'clock's house, knock on that door again. No one's home. Go to my Tuesday, knock on my Tuesday appointment, and he answers the door. I remember he had a black pit bull dog, and he was behind the fence, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that mortgage protection stuff. Oh yeah, somebody came this weekend. Thanks, but no thanks," and closed the door on me. And so that's my first week. I spent $250. And that Thursday, I'm getting on a plane flight going to Raleigh, North Carolina. And the only thing I'm thinking in my head is like, man, I got to find something from this whole conference, just one thing that can make me successful come Monday. And guys, I promise you that piece, I didn't understand the big words they were talking about. I didn't understand the rollouts, but I did understand one thing, and it came in passing between one speaker to the next. And it was Casey Watkins. And he said this. He said, "Guys, this is a business of metrics." And he said, "The only thing you can control in this business is you." He said, "The one time you lose is when you quit." And he said, "The one thing you can control is this: picking up the phone one more time to dial one more family, to book one more appointment, to go sell one more policy, to go and make one more commission check." And he said, "If you do that, you will win." And that was the only thing I took away from that conference. And so I'll come Monday, I'm looking at my numbers, I'm looking at my ratios, Keith, and it says from the 4 cornerstones, it says 250 to 300 dials a week, right? It says 12 to 15 appointments. And I'm looking at my numbers, and I made 182 dials. I failed there. I booked 3 appointments. I failed there. And the one thing I'm thinking to myself is, man, I'm going to have to work 3 to 4 to 5 times harder than everyone else if I want to be successful here. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I have $750 left, so I'm going to make it work. So here's what happened my second week in the field. I made 750 something dials. I spoke to probably an asinine amount of people. And guess how many appointments I booked? 4. So I got a tiny bit better. Still no sales, goose egg that week. But here's the one thing that I did. Guys, I didn't focus on in-home presentation. The one thing I realized was this, is that if I don't get more people to book an appointment with me or show up, then there's no point in me trying anything else. And so I took sticky notes everywhere. I put them all over the place that said already taken care of, too busy, spouse isn't home. I had flashcards all over the place. Every time I flipped on a light, if the sticky note said not interested, I had to repeat verbatim exactly what it said for my rebuttal. I put every time I brushed my teeth in the morning and at night, I would read my phone script from my rebuttal sheet. I recorded myself, put it in my ears as I went to sleep, anything and everything possible to just memorize and lock down that phone script and rebuttals. And so then I'm going into my third week, and I made a very big mistake at that point. I wrote on my grandma's, I was living with my grandma at the time, on her futon. I wrote with an expo marker, like a whiteboard marker, on her bathroom mirror. Word of advice, don't do that. That was, I got in so much trouble. But anyways, back to the story. So I'm sitting there, it's my third week, and I'm coming in my third week. And that was the one weekend that I remember was the absolute hardest weekend in this business, because my grandma had just retired after 30 something years at Chase Bank, and everybody and their mother was coming over that weekend. And that weekend I sat down and I dialed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for 30 plus hours, hand dialing for 1,016 dials. I couldn't tell you how many people I spoke to because I stopped counting. The only game I played with myself, Keith, was this. I wrote on my lead sheets if somebody said not taken, too busy, already taken care of, not interested. So every time I found that lead that said Ryan Federico and he told me not interested, I knew what that sucker was going to say. so I just prepared myself for him to say not interested and my rebuttal right after. But here's what happened. I made 1,016 dials that weekend. I booked 9 appointments. And the only thing I remember was this, is I'm sitting in this back room just like this at my desk, looking behind me, and there's just a door, I knock on the door every 10, 15 minutes is what it felt like. Andrew, why aren't you outside? Andrew, why are you back here working? Andrew, why don't you come out and play? Andrew, it's Saturday. Your grandma just retired. Andrew, don't you work for yourself? Can't you take Saturday off? No, because if I don't do this, I won't have a job. And I remember sitting there for 30 hours. That was the hardest weekend I've ever had in this business, because I had to fight through the mentally sitting down for so long, and 2, constantly being told, oh, why are you doing that? You haven't made any money. Shouldn't you just go get a job? And that week, I went out there, ran those 9 appointments, and guess what? I sold nothing. And I'm going into this last week with my last $250. And the only thing I'm thinking is like, man, something's got to turn around, because I'm tapped out, everything. But see, I got on the phone that week, Ryan, and that weekend, I only made 120 something dials. I spoke to, I think it was about 26, 28 people, and I booked 12 appointments. All of a sudden, my ratios jumped because of all the practice I had been doing, all the repetition, and I think my attitude changed that I needed to make it work, so therefore it was going to work. And here's what happened. I ran all those appointments, and I made one sale to this woman called Davina Moore. She was 30-something years old. She had an $80,000 mortgage, Keith. So that AMAN policy was a whopping $30. So you know what I did? I loaded that sucker up with every single rider you could possibly imagine. She got a full comprehensive policy, and it was enough money from what I calculated that I was like, I can buy leads again next week. And what happened was this: it took me 27 days to make my first sale, but the next month I made $6,000. The month after that, I made $8,000. The month after that, I made $13,000. And then within that, by June of that same year, I'm yelling at my grandma saying, Grandma, we're going to Cancun. And I took her to, actually it was Puerto Vallarta. We went to Puerto Vallarta, and I paid for everything because she was the only one that believed in me that I could make it work. So that was my first 6 months-ish, Ryan.
So let me just ask you something, man, because so you're going through that, and look, I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this. Keith and I have seen it a lot. I'm sure Andrew's seen it a lot in his agency. Like, this dog fight exists. Some of you guys are going through it right now. And this is that inflection point when it's so much easier just to go, I can't do it, and go back the other way. But I want to ask a specific question, Andrew, because I've been tripping on this recently. During that time, when you were looking at the other people that were having success and were writing business, and you were going to those Friday meetings and people were putting their numbers up on the board and you were seeing leaderboards, did you ever get into your own head and go like, what's wrong with me? Like there must be something specifically wrong with me, that maybe I'm not good enough. And how did you deal with that doubt, if that ever came up for you?
Yeah, I can tell you it was a constant fight of, am I good enough? Like, am I good enough to even do this business? I suck at the phones. I suck at sales. I suck at just about every possible thing in this business. And so the only thing I could focus on, Ryan, was like, I honestly just set myself and said, well, I have $1,000. I told myself I was committed to this thing. Well, I'm going to give it my absolute gosh darn dangest, everything that I can possibly give it. And that meant, fighting through absolutely every rebuttal and just mistake and hurdle you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, and you can see that level of commitment. I hope everybody's listening to that and taking notes, and maybe struggling on the phones, having those sticky notes. You guys have heard me share plenty of times. I took the rebuttals and I read them into the voice recorder on my phone, and I left 30 seconds of space in between each rebuttal, and then I just played it back in my headphones so I could read the rebuttals and spit them back to, the recording playing every 30 seconds of a new rebuttal coming at me, and I played that over and over and over and over, driving around to appointments and walking around my house and making dinner, and my wife is talking to me and I'm just like, oh, did they show you the A options, the B options, or the C options? Like, and getting these rebuttals out, and practice, 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 practice. Think about professional sports. Next weekend's the Super Bowl. We're not going to have this call because next weekend's the Super Bowl. NFL players practice a lot more than they play. A lot more than they play. And most professionals practice a lot more than they play. How much are you practicing? Right, and how much are you developing your skills? So we always want to give something tangible. We got about 10 minutes left, and we want to do something tangible, and then talk about building for those people who have that vision, who want to build an agency here. So the tangible piece I would ask you is, man, you've brought in a lot of agents. You just talked about the struggle that a lot of new agents are going to go through. So if we want to give somebody, outside of the mindset and the encouragement, something actual tangible that they can do to get better this week, right? When you have a new agent, what are, the things that you kind of tell them, this is what you need to be focusing on right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm speaking to the new agents right now, right? Like, I don't need to fan Keith's flames over here. He's the roaring fire. But the new agents who are just over here, like, gosh, there's a lot going on. Like, how do I focus on getting good at my presentation? How do I get focused on getting good at building rapport? Like, I can tell you guys this. There's three things that create sales in insurance, okay? Or just in general, okay? Number one, and is the most important, is the quantity of people you see, the number of people you see. The second one is called the quality of the presentation. And the third one is the quality of your relationship with the client. Everyone wants to skip number one and go straight to number two. But the problem is for me, I think the number one thing anyone can focus on, and especially the first 6 months, is get really stupid good at your phone script. I mean, it will create a 100K plus career if you figure out how to lock down and get to the point that you're seeing a minimum 10 people per week, 10 sets per week, especially virtually. Like, everything you want is on the other side of that.
So
So
there's a lot of pieces in that though, right? So
yeah,
there's, get good at the first 10 seconds of the phone script, memorize the whole thing. What questions do you ask, building value, locking stuff down, getting people to show up. So, or rebuttals, or, overcoming objections. So what are the things that you find, like, agents, this is what new agents get tripped up on the most, that they should spend the most of their time focusing on?
yep. If not first, going through and learning your rebuttals, right? So you can actually book the appointment. But second is getting your show factor locked in. Okay.
Okay. Well, let's break those down real quick. So rebuttals, learn all the rebuttals, or are there some rebuttals that are going to come up more often than others?
I say it's the big three. Okay.
Okay.
The
What
big
are those?
three is be too busy, not interested, and already taken care of, right? Those are kind of the big three. And then you can throw in the one where my spouse isn't home, right?
Yeah, and we won't spend too much time diving into those. For anybody who needs it, sfgnavigator.com. In level 1, there's an overcoming objections tutorial where those are the 3 that we focus on, right? So highly suggest you going into that. So then you said the show factor. So let's talk about that. When you're talking to a new agent, you're like, here's how to increase the number of appointments that are showing up on your calendar. Because we know if you're new, just like Andrew shared his story, I could share my story. I'm sure everybody with experience on this call can share their story of having a super low show factor when you first start setting appointments, right? So
Yeah.
how are you telling a new agent specifically what to do to increase the amount of people that show up for their appointments?
Number one is create a checklist, and here's your checklist.
Oh,
Number one is you have to get the client to say the date and time at least 3 times. Okay. Number two is they need to write down everything. Okay. So as you go through, make sure they're not distracted, driving, hugging the kid, whatever's going on, like make sure you got their attention. Number three, here's what I really like to say is make sure you go super, super slow. Everyone gets so excited that they get to check that box that they or score another tally that they booked another appointment. Do not rush through the second half of the phone script. It is incredibly important. And number four is really watch the weak language. Should, could, would, might, be, if, like all, maybe, anything that comes out of that.
like give me an example of that. What's like weak language from me? Because I know sometimes that happens on the phone where a new agent's like, hey, would it be okay if I called you on Tuesday? Or do you mind if I asked you what your height and your weight is? Like that weak language or something coming from the client?
That too, you should never do that. That's a no-no. But the
It's
client
not in the
especially,
script.
yeah, it's not in the script. The client especially, they will never give you a surefire certain thing unless you're portraying that. They might go like, "Oh, yeah, Ryan, that should work. Yeah, like 6 p.m. on Monday. Yeah, that should work just fine." And
Should be
most
available.
people, yeah, and most people would be like, "Oh, perfect. You agreed to that." And the truth is, no, you need to go out there, and I just say you call it out, and you go, "Oh, hold on, Ryan, you just said that should work. Now, is that should, like it might, or what, definitely at 6 p.m. on Monday is going to work best for you?" And you let them answer.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to like challenge that a little bit without being mean. You're just making sure that, hey, I got 12 other families to see on Monday.
So talk to me real quick about this, and then we'll move on to building for our last 5 minutes before we shut this thing down. Talk about this date and time 3 times. So
Mhm.
where are we saying the date and time 3 times for them, that so it's not repetitive and it's not like so I can say that sometimes to agents and I'm like, hey, get them to say the date and time 3 times, and they're like they just do it 3 times in a row. They're like, so Tuesday at 6 o'clock, right? Yep. Okay. What time are we meeting again? Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So are you sure, Tuesday, 6 p.m. is going to work for you? So if you want to role play it, I can role play it with you, but what's a way that you would maybe get them to say the date and the time 3 times so it lodges in their brain that they're meeting with you on that
Yeah.
time?
I'll roll through it. It's fairly simple. I say it's right at the beginning when you're trying to find the time that works best for him. So if I go, "Hey Ryan, what time of day works best for you? Is it mornings, afternoon, or evenings?" And he says,
Evenings.
"Evenings." Okay, Ryan, I'm taking a look at my schedule. Um, I'm extremely busy today or this week, but I can squeeze you in at either a 6:15 or a 5:45. Which one works better for you? Is the 5:45 or the 6:15 better?
6:15.
And he says 6:15. Okay, and so we have here Monday at 6:15, right? He says yes.
Yep. Monday 6:15.
Then we start just chatting, and I start having him write some stuff down. And he goes through, and I have him write down just like the script says. You need your doctor's information, your driver's license. Make sure that you and your spouse will be there. If it's a Zoom appointment, it's a phone, it's an in-home. You go through that. Then I say that last one, they're supposed to write down the date and time. So I just pause and I say, "And at what time are we supposed to meet down at again?" And I let
6:15.
them write down exactly that number 4 or 5 on the script, 6:15 on Monday.
So that's 2 things, 2 times.
That's that
Yep.
2 times. And I say, "Okay, perfect." And then the last thing I had for you is, where do you normally write down all your appointments so you never forget them? And so they might say the refrigerator, the calendar, whatever it is. And I say, okay, great. Can you walk over there for a second? Or it's their phone. And I say, can you put me down for one more time? Our meeting time is Monday at
6:15.
6:15. And that's the third time. And I say, perfect. I can't wait to meet you then. And so we can go over your rights and your benefits.
I love that. I love that. Go over your rights and your benefits. But they got them to agree 3 times in a natural conversation without putting them in a headlock going, are you 100% sure that this is going to work for you? You better show up. You know, like people get crazy sometimes, like new agents, right? They freak out. And I love that thing. And I would just add this piece before we just wrap it up here about building. Like, I love that last question. I use it every time I set an appointment. Where do you typically write down your important appointments? Like if you had a doctor's appointment, where would you put it? Do you have a calendar? Do you have a day planner? Do you put it in your phone? Is it an Outlook? Where do you put it at? Oh, I put it in my phone. Okay, great. Break out your phone. Let's put it in there. You
Yep.
can add me. You can add my email. Have them add you as an invite to that calendar, right? So I know that Keith had a question for you to kind of wrap up about your growth, and we didn't quite know if Keith was going to be home or not, so I didn't mean to dominate this interview. But Keith had a question about growing and building an agency, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So go ahead, Keith.
You know, Ryan dominated me on the sexiest man list, right, Andrew?
By 100
No,
points.
this has been an amazing interview, guys. So I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of close it up. Yeah, we did get home. So thank you, Ryan, for carrying this. And Andrew, thank you so much for coming to enrich our team. You're my baby bro for life. That's an inside thing. Everyone knows. I mean, Andrew's way ahead of where I hope to be at Symmetry. So congratulations on all your success. My question is not the typical building question, right? It's more geared towards where some folks are now so that they can kind of understand where you were to where you are now. So it's a two-part question. First one is, how did you see yourself when you were new to be able to carry yourself to get here, right? So Ryan kind of talked about it, like what were you thinking about yourself? Where did you see that transition take place? And what did it look or feel like when you started to understand, I'm someone who can do this, but I'm also someone who can lead other people. I'm someone who can be an inspiration and an attraction. I'm someone who can model this thing for other people even after I'm out of the field. So that's part one of that, getting that sense of feeling. And then part two of it is, did it contribute by getting around people who already felt that way, right? We got to meet each other in person in Newport Beach. We've become like brothers for life from that one conference. And so, how did getting around those people that were already feeling that way help you with that transition through the time?
I have one story that is like, I think will answer everything in the two-part, because I think that the number one biggest missed thing ever is association. Everyone wants to just try to read more books and not go around people, not get to the events, not put yourself at dinners. That is by far, in my opinion, the fastest and best way to grow yourself, especially here. So there was a time I went to my first ever key leader meeting, Keith. It was in 2017, and it was Ashley Tarr, Danny Young, Brian Pope were coming out for a spring tour. And I had just hit key leader, so I got to go to my very first one after being here for a year. And I was like, man, I'm in, right? And so I made a very deliberate decision to sit at the dinner right between Brian Pope to my left, Carl Miller across from me, Ashley Tarr diagonal, Danny Young to the right, like very
Wait,
strategic.
who are these people for those that are new and don't understand conceptually who you just named?
Brian Pope, founder of the company. Across from me, Carl Miller, owner. I think his organization doing like 7 to 10 million, someone in there. Ashley Tarr has got an agency doing about 16, 18 million. And Danny Young's got an agency doing 21 million now. And so I strategically placed myself to try to get insight from all of them, right? So the first thing I do is I turn to Danny and I say, Danny, this is young me, so just bear with me, guys, 22 years old. And I literally say verbatim this, man, Danny, would you mind giving me some insight on my business? Yeah, sure, buddy. What's going on? Man, I feel like we're doing so well. I just hit key leader. We're popping out riders over the place. I mean, if we honestly do this thing, we're just going to kick it back and we'll be able to coast all the way to agency owner very quickly. And I kid you not, he looks at me, Keith, and he says, son, I have no idea what you just said. And he said, if you want to hire people like you, continue to talk like that. And he said, if you want to hire people like me, you're gonna have to learn how to change the way that you talk. And Ashley Tarr then pipes in. She says, well, that's just Danny being Danny. But she's like, I got a quick question for you. What are you reading? I said, well, I'm reading 4 books a month, 5 books a month, right? Cranking out a book a week. She said, great. Give me the last one thing from each of the last 5 books that you've read. And after a lot of ums and uhs, I cranked out one thing. And she said, that's the reason why. She's like, it's far better to read 1 book a month and get everything that you possibly could out of that book at your stage versus just trying to roll through a bunch. And so that moment, Keith, was 1, the association, and 2, a quick reality check that, hey, I can go out there and I can read all this stuff, but if I don't actually implement what I'm reading, it doesn't matter. So I started to slow down. I started to read absolutely everything and journal in my notebook. Afterwards, I would journal what I read and how I can implement it either on a social standard, business standard, or personal standard. And then I transcribed every single day, verbatim, word for word, out of my book, 1 whole page, so I could learn how to talk like more editorial versus more slang.
What do you think, like?
Beautiful, beautiful
Yeah,
story.
these are the tips that we don't get, right? From the normal, like, work hard, make more dials, that kind of thing. How did that change you? Like, how do you see that changing and transforming you as a human being? Not even just in your symmetry business, but as a person.
It made every piece of going from like just thinking like I'm getting better to actually watching myself evolve, where a lot of times I don't think I see it just because I'm with myself every single day. But I have agents that will come to me all the time and be like, dude, we've known you for 4 years now. And the amount of time that you've grown over 2 to 3 years versus what we've done is tremendous. And I think it's honestly, Keith, it's just this intentional play to be the best possible version of myself every single year. Not every day, not every week, because it's easy to be the best version of you in a day. But doing it every single year, I think it's just this constant evolution and implementation of that.
And now you know why he's got $7 million of agency volume in his career over the last couple of years. So if you want to have the same thing, follow the same tips. Man, Andrew, you know I love you, man, and my life is a lot better with you in it. And I
Love you,
appreciate you so
Andrew.
much. Thank you so much for coming on and pouring into everybody.